We're all set.
Thank you. I'd like to call the April 26th meeting of the Planning, Energy, and Environmental Quality Committee to order. And I know we have at least one person for public comment and a couple of other folks that wanted to join us from the public for the meeting. And so anybody that's attending from the public can speak now. You have about 3 minutes. And so why don't we start with Vanessa, because I know she had said she wanted to speak. Vanessa Greene?
Yeah, sure. Hey, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Wonderful.
Hi, Vanessa.
Hi. Well, hello, everyone. My name is Vanessa Greene, and I live in Newfield. I'm currently running to represent the Enfield-Newfield district in the Tompkins Legislature. I'm looking forward to hearing the presentation today from the Environmental Management Council. I want to say that Tompkins County certainly stands out in New York for our leadership in recycling and composting. But we need to remember that the environmental benefits associated with recycling and composting tend to be small when compared to efforts to reduce overall consumption. Circular economies and reuse models can contribute positively to our county's economy. Consider that the Ithaca Reuse Center, a local nonprofit, is able to convert 1 ton of previously owned goods into $2,500 worth of economic activity for our county. Now that's versus $93 a ton that they pay to send 1 ton of material to the Ontario landfill. I encourage the Peak Committee to look hard at ways that we can put more policies into place that encourage waste reduction and reuse. The city of Los Angeles last month in April, they passed an ordinance that will require restaurants to provide to-go utensils and accessories such as condiment packets only if requested by the customer. Now, this is a model that Tompkins County could follow. Plastics consumption in the US continues to rise. 2020 was the highest year yet. And county taxpayers have limited options right now in many situations in paying to purchase wasteful materials and then paying again to dispose of it through removal fees and county taxes. For the past 2 years, I've been active on the Zero Waste Subcommittee of the EMC. We're partnering on an education and outreach podcast on plastic pollution that you'll see referenced in today's agenda packet on page 103. There'll be an advertisement for the podcast on TCAT buses in May. It'll look like this image that you see here behind me now. Episodes will be available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts starting next week. I invite you to listen, and I hope that it sparks further conversation on what we can do to curb local waste production. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vanessa. Do any of the other folks from the public want to speak at this time? Okay, well, thank you for joining us. Next on our agenda, I want to ask, are there any changes to the agenda for today? Okay, and next we'll go to minutes approval. Can somebody approve the minutes? This is for the March 22nd meeting.
I'll move those, Annie.
Deborah, seconded by Amanda. Okay, I had just one correction. I didn't get a chance to send out to Brittany, so I'll just say it here. It's on packet page 4, 3rd line down where it says Energy Transit Summit. It should be Energy Transition Summit. And that was myself that talked about it, so maybe I just said the word too fast. So it's Energy Transition Summit. Any other corrections to the minutes? Okay, so let's vote on those. Deborah?
Yes.
Amanda?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
And I'm a yes, so that's all in favor. I forgot to mention that Dave McKenna, another legislator also on this committee, had a medical appointment today, so he was unable to attend. And next is Chair's report, and then County Administrator's report. I don't see anybody here from County Administration yet. So I'm gonna hold off because my comments were regarding Jason Molino, our County Administrator, leaving the county. So I'll hold off till maybe next month, or if he comes later in the meeting. And so, again, so Kathy, did you hear anything about anybody from County Administration coming or not coming today?
No, I did not hear anything, Ann.
Okay, so we'll wait and see if they show up and we could work them into the agenda. So moving right along, we're ahead of schedule now. We have a really packed agenda today. So we're going to try and keep things moving as best we can. We have a lot of, we have several resolutions. We have 3 reports. And so we'll just try and keep it moving as best we can. The next is Planning and Sustainability Department. Is there any report or should we go right to Darby's report on the harmful algal bloom strategy? Guess we'll go right to Darby then. So Darby, Katie, is that?
I couldn't get my video was hidden underneath something. I couldn't get to it. The only piece of information I wanted to share with you all is really with our housing committee, but planning covers everything as well. So just wanted to let people know that we do have a new hire coming on board on June 1st to help with our housing program in particular, but just in general for the planning department. Her name's Susan Lanfried, and she's coming to join us from Georgia. So we're really excited to get her on board.
Well, we welcome her, and I'm sure you're glad, we're glad that she's coming on board. Just trying to monitor a couple of things here. Deborah forwarded me an email that from Jason Molino that he will not be at our meeting today. So thanks for sending that. He's working on our budget retreat. And that Amy sounds, I thought I said something here about Amy will be here. Oh yeah, Amy will be here.
Amy just joined us.
Okay. Amy, did you want to go before or after Darby's presentation?
It does not matter, but I don't have much of a report. So by not much of a report, I have no report for today unless you guys have any COVID related questions, but otherwise I have no report. So make it really easy.
Are you channeling Jonathan?
So Darby, if you don't mind holding on for a second, does anybody have any questions for Amy? Okay, great. We're moving right along. Darby, thanks for letting us get distracted a bit there. So we're back to you.
Great, thanks for having me. I'm gonna quick do my share screen.
And if people are following along in the agenda packet also, but Darby has a presentation, the agenda packet, it's page 9.
Yes, thank you. Very helpful. Everybody see the share screen? You got the big flashy presentation there?
Perfect.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thanks for having me. Darby Kiley here today from the Department of Planning and Sustainability. And we've been working for a couple of years on a harmful algal bloom strategy, both with the Water Resources Council and with stakeholders. So I just wanted to let you know that the draft is now available for public comment. At the end, I have a link to a form. It's just a simple Google form. If anyone wanted to make comments on it, we'll be posting a press release, but it's all available on our website as well. And what I've learned is I never thank people. So I'm now catching on that you put acknowledgements at the front and then you remember. And so this has been as I mentioned, a couple-year project. And we've had this quite illustrious group of members on the HABs Action Committee. And thanks for Amanda for being part of the group and helping us move right along. So this is a long list of folks. Some are not even on the Water Resources Council, but have been working on an advisory role with the group as well. And back in maybe late summer last year, I presented kind of an outline of what this HABs action plan would be. And at that point got some stakeholder input. So really appreciate their input, and we'll be sharing this with them again as well. And then just our department staff, I mean, people reviewing documents and helping clarify what some of the actions are. And then so really appreciate their input. And so I'll get into the content. It's as Anne mentioned, it starts on page 9-ish in your agenda packet. It's an 8-page document. It is not the 1,000-page hazard mitigation plan or some of the other, but it's a dense document that makes references to a lot of other documents. So I'll just kind of go through quickly what all these parts and pieces are. And kind of the why we're even doing this is back in 2018, the state worked on, started a $65 million project to assess harmful algal blooms. So these are cyanobacteria. These are not new things in our environment. They've been on the planet for billions of years, but we saw more and more outbreaks where there are lots of blooms, and some of those are actually toxic. So they started looking into this. They did action plans on 12 different water bodies across New York State, and lucky for Tompkins County, 2 of our watersheds, both Kelles Lake and Owasco Lake, were included in the 12 HABs action plans that were produced by the state. So we use that as like, okay, what are we going to do? What are we in Tompkins County, Soil and Water, all our agencies and partners, like, how are we going to address this issue? And what we found was that the DEC's documents were very broad and, not specific in terms of the actions or even locations. And so we thought, okay, we need a little bit more specificity. So we took both Owasco and Kelles Lake action plans are pretty similar in their recommendations for implementation. And so, I'm going to go back and forth between talking about Kelles and Owasco, but they're very similar. And kind of our actions and what we want to do are also very similar. So just, know that I'm talking about both if I pick one or the other. And so we took these action plans and said, okay, how can we get this more specific? We also looked at recently the Soil and Water Conservation District finished up their 5-year strategic plan of their AEM, that agricultural and environmental management plan that they do every 5 years. So that is where they get specific about watersheds that they're working on and types of projects that they're going after. So those are the current plans that fed into what we're working on here. And then there are a number of pending plans. So activities and documents that as they come out and are finalized, I'll touch on a couple of these, they might influence how we change our actions or what we do in the community. And just to mention a couple of those, the Owasco Lake is working on not only a 9-element plan, which is a watershed management plan, and that should be coming out soon. And that gets pretty specific about what they want to do and in which areas of the watershed. But they also just finished up their watershed rules and regulations document that they sent to the state has to approve that. So depending on how the state gives feedback, we'll provide more. And I'm only going to just say the words total maximum daily load for phosphorus for Kelles Lake, because I could spend the next 3 hours talking about it, and I'm already more than halfway through my time. So more on that kind of through Amanda, Water Resources Council, we're making comments. And then the other plans that are coming out, and we'll find out more about those. And I think what I reported earlier back in August or September was that the state did a study on over 160 water bodies in New York State, and they really found that there are 4 conditions that trigger HABs. I found this really great little simple diagram of what fetch is. I think we use that word, but we don't always remember what it means. So that's the longest length and wind direction on a water body. So in our case, in both Cayuga and Owasco, pretty north-south running lakes, and we have pretty north-south running winds. So that's, it builds up a lot of steam basically as the winds pick up. So that those two things are correlated with triggering HABs. Also the presence of the zebra and quagga mussels. I think most of us are familiar with these invasive mussels, the little guys that get crusted onto everything and that's in the water, and just the way they selectively eat and recycle nutrients is contributing to the presence of HABs. And then the average total phosphorus levels. And when we're talking about that, phosphorus is what we've been talking about for years in terms of impacting the water quality in Cayuga Lake and Owasco Lake. And then the documents further detail, well, where's phosphorus coming from in our watersheds? And so only 8%, 8 to 9% is in point sources. So that's your wastewater treatment plant, like source cooling. So those are identified as our point sources. They have permits that regulate how they discharge their nutrients. But then 92% of our phosphorus loading into the lake is from non-point sources. And this lists out the septic load, agriculture, natural areas, and developed lands all contribute to that 92% of the phosphorus load. That's a quick info on the triggering. The document also talks about the monitoring, both with how HABs are monitored with the state reporting system, but then also CSI has, the Community Science Institute has a HABs Harriers program where they cover over 50% of Cayuga Lake's lakeshore and do regular reporting on what they see. But then it's also important that we are testing just the water quality itself and finding out where is the phosphorus coming from in different watersheds. And so there are state programs and then also some local efforts on that. So then the document, that's the first 4 pages. I'm not sure why it takes so long to talk about, but then we get into the actions that are in this. And they're still pretty broad. And the section on agriculture is really just about encouraging farmers to adopt best management practices. And so thanking farmers for what they do, reminding them that there are resources available. How do you keep promoting cover crops? And the TMDL, that's the draft that's out, does help get a little bit more specific in terms of the watersheds. But we really wanted this action plan to not add on to soil and water conservation district's workload. They're already doing so much with the resources that they have, but how can we help them get the word out, share information? So that's what the first 5 actions in here talk about. The next section is on ditch management, and we feel like this is another topic we've talked about for years and years. I don't know how many of you were able to catch Rebecca Schneider's presentation through the Finger Lakes Land Trust a week or so ago. But she really talks about how our highway departments are the water resource stewards for our communities, and like what they do in the ditches impacts our streams and lake. So a lot of this is about training for soil and water conservation districts, for highway departments, but then also are there some ditch management BMPs to implement that are new? So we're gonna get into that with a pilot project. The other area is stream buffers and wetlands. So we have some great resources. So again, doing trainings and reaching out to landowners about opportunities that come up. And then the 4th area is on collaboration. I think we've been doing this more and more with both the Cayuga Lake Watershed Intermunicipal Organization and Owasco Lakes. There's more conversation that's been coming up in the last couple of years. And so this just kind of goes through a list of how we can go do more collaboration with our neighboring municipalities and then also just try to share the word about what we are doing in the watershed, but then also across the watershed boundaries. So that is barely squeezing into my time. As I noted, the draft is available on the Tompkins County website. We'll have a news area posted pretty soon. If people have comments on the document itself, the actions that are in the document are more specific than what I just went through. So people can make comments on that either on a form or via email. So with that, I'll take any questions.
Thank you, Darby, for the presentation. Any legislators have questions? Deborah?
Yeah, thanks, Danny, and thank you, Darby. I know that this plan is primarily focused on phosphorus loading, and the TMDL only relates to phosphorus. And I'm just wondering if there are any synergies or possibilities that because DEC is focused on phosphorus load in Cayuga Lake, there might be more resources coming down the pike to address that.
Maybe. I think with the TMDL, it will be a matter of still applying for the same sources of funding and saying, checking a box when you do an application that says we're a phosphorus restricted watershed. So it would get more points. But as far as I can tell, the funding sources are all the same. There's WQIP and the same kind of funding streams for the soil and water and the agricultural side as well.
So they didn't add anything, they just made us more competitive.
Not that we can tell yet, and they didn't, since we didn't even have a CFA round last year, it'll be interesting to see what comes out this year, even in programming. But I mean, according to the state budget, the Environmental Protection Fund, where most of this funding comes from, is at the same level it was funded at last year.
Thanks.
Thank you, Amanda.
Well, over the past 2 years, Darby has answered most of my questions. So I just wanted to say thank you, Darby. And I know this is just the beginning of, working on these things, but it's, and it's such a hard topic because we often don't really know like how to stop this. And, as you said, like so much of it is non-point source, and, there's limited things that we can do. But I think the group with Darby leading it has come up with a lot of really great actions, and I look forward to seeing those things, come to fruition. So thank you for leading this.
Oh, happy to have you on board.
Martha?
Thanks, Annie, and thanks, Darby. A lot of work here. The Mother Nature Bond Act, like I want to say $3 billion or something, that was deferred last year, but the legislature moved to put it, I think, to put on the ballot for 2022. Is that right? So they're probably in the middle, just at the beginning of defining what's going to be in there. But I wonder if that might be an opportunity. It does seem to be much more about preservation, conservation than, say, renewable energy, as far as I can tell.
Right. No, that I think we kind of forgot about that after it disappeared a year or more ago. But that is definitely something to be looking into, because I think we are kind of making lists of like, oh, if we only had different funding sources to do a variety of things. So that, yeah, definitely something to keep track of. And I will say that in the DEC's presentation of the TMDL earlier last week, they did admit it's going to take a generation to see any changes in terms of the phosphorus levels in Cayuga Lake. So, I mean, even with all these actions that we're doing, I mean, this is a long-term process. So really, we hope to see some improvements on the land side, but also know that it'll be a while before we see much change in the lake itself, both the lakes.
All right, thanks very much.
So Darby, I had a question. You said there really isn't any change in the funding from this year and last year. So are you saying that, I think I read in here, there is 65 million that the state allocated to address HABs? Did the funding go into effect last year?
A few years ago is when this $65 million figure came out. Some millions of dollars went into doing these action plans across the state. And then the other money just appeared to be part of existing programs. So there's the water quality improvement funds. It's, I haven't thought about it in a while of where they've talked about the money going, but it's more just like it's programmatic in existing areas. So it's not just like suddenly this chunk of money started falling through, because a big piece of it is having more staffing for the soil and water conservation districts. But even, there's no obvious way that that's happening.
Okay, all right. So, and it was in your report here about, I'm not sure what page, but about, oh, here it is, a conservation loan bank. And so that is through, so the WRC, and Soil and Water take the lead in helping with the Conservation Loan Bank. Is that correct?
Yeah. The idea has been batted around in a variety of different ways for a few years. And the Soil and Water really benefits from the pot of money that the Tompkins County does allocate, like $200,000 every year, so that they can start implementing best management practices, because the state then refunds the money once it's spent. So, it's this pot of money that comes and goes. But Soil and Water feels like they could do more if they had outside sources of funding. Another idea that's come out of the Water Resources Council is that there are the conservation reserve programs. So if a farmer sets aside a certain number of acres, they get paid for setting that acreage aside and put it in riparian buffers instead of agriculture. But the problem is they don't think there's not always enough money for that. And so what if instead of paying $1,000 for that number of acreage, what if they're getting $2,000? So the idea would be to put together a funding stream so that it could augment existing programs. I have no idea how this would work, but it keeps coming up as a topic. And so we need to put some heads together. And if anyone knows anyone who might think of how this could work, we are all ears.
Okay, so it sounds like one part of that is you need more money in that program.
Yes.
And then farmers or landowners would get hopefully reimbursed.
Correct, yeah.
But that's probably not 100%. They don't know, they probably don't always know for sure that they're going to get reimbursed. Is that correct?
Well, the state, so when Soil and Water puts up applies for grant funding to say do a covered barnyard, the applicant themselves have to put that money up, and then they get paid back by the state. So even though they have a grant in and they've been approved, they have to put their own money in and then get reimbursed. So the idea is like the county already does this for Soil and Water, helps defer that cost in between the reimbursement. But what if there was more money or cover different programs? So that's kind of one piece of it. And then also just augmenting some of the other, the other program money to set aside land for conservation.
Right, if we need to do everything we can as soon as possible, and it takes a generation for these efforts to take effect, yeah, we need more money. Any other questions for Darby? And are you needing anything from us today? Do you need us to?
Nope, nothing from you guys, just getting the word out that a document's available for public comment, and I'll follow up with you guys after we get the comments and move it along.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for the presentation and all your work on this, and everybody else that you listed there. including Bob Howard's daughter, it looks like. So that's
Yeah,
cool.
she's on our committee. Yep.
Funny that she should get into this type of thing, but okay, with her parents. But great. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Anne?
Dan, sorry.
No
Yes.
problem. Thank you. I have two things. First of all, there may be some people here that meant to talk in privilege of the floor that didn't realize that it was over, or I'm not sure. I think they have comments about the ag district thing. And then related to that, I'm wondering if we might consider switching the order and doing the ag district resolutions before the forest resolution. There are at least 4 or 5 people here for the ag district discussion.
Yeah, I see Scott is here and Mila is here. Sure, I think that'd be great. Thanks for bringing that up.
Thank you.
So were there any folks that want to speak in privilege of the floor that didn't get a chance yet? You can have 3 minutes if you'd like to speak to the committee.
I'm not sure what to, hi, my name is Phil Burler. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, I'm sorry, when at the beginning, when that was happening, I was trying to get to the your portal and it wasn't working. I wasn't able to get there, but I'm speaking in relation to the property on Howland Road being added to Ag District 1. And I know a lot of us neighbors here on Howland Road inundated you folks with letters and emails about that subject. And I guess the main thing I wanted to say, because there was a lot of different information sent in those letters, is that we feel strongly that the people who own that property, the property changed ownership, but we see the same, first of all, we see the same people on that property working there. We have been subjected to a real nightmare of operations there, essentially an industrial operation. And they claim to be wanting to operate that property as a farm with livestock and whatever, although they've never told us that. They don't need to be in the ag district or included in the ag district to do the operation that they claim they want to operate. And our feeling is, since they haven't been honorable, well, let's wait and see what they actually do there. They don't need to be in the ag district. If they are included in the ag district, the town has little or no authority over what goes on there. Let's deny the application now. Let's proceed with an honorable operation that falls into the purview of what should be in an ag district, then everyone will be happy and fine. They don't need to be in the ag district in order to do what they claim to be doing. We don't really believe them, but we can wait and see. If they're included in the ag district at this time, then anything that goes on there, industrial in nature, like what occurred in the past, there'll be little or no authority to control that. And this is a neighborhood. They're not adjacent to any of the other ag districts, and they have, from their past behavior, we don't feel that that they are doing anything like farming there. I don't know if Carrie wants to add anything to that. Carrie lives directly across from there and has suffered the most. I'm a little bit downwind from them, and have suffered some of that same stuff. This is a quiet neighborhood living in the middle of an industrial operation from what had gone on there before. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Phil.
Thank
Did
you for
anybody else
listening.
want to? I'm getting feedback here. If folks could turn off their microphones, unless they want to speak. Carrie, did you or anybody else on the call or on the Zoom want to speak for privilege of the floor?
Yes, thank you. First, I want to thank you all for taking the time to read all of those emails. I'm hoping you read all those emails and not just mine, because I noticed mine was in the packet, and I wanted to apologize because I am not a politician, luckily, and I can't always control my emotion. So, so this has been a very emotional issue. It's not meant to be a personal issue, but it has become that way living on this road. It has been very challenging over the past couple of years to see this happen in a place where we all kind of wanted to settle down. And as I pointed out, nobody is against agriculture. I'm not against agriculture. I've worked on farms. I appreciate farms. I value that whole system. But what we've seen isn't agriculture. It's very different, and it's scary, and it's dangerous. And that's my main point, is that we welcome a truly agricultural enterprise, something that will bring value to our neighborhood, that we can all, appreciate as part of our local food resources or whatever they choose to get into. But it just feels really uncertain right now, and it feels like if our town isn't there to represent us, and I think Dave West pointed out some really great things in his letter. Margaret Corbett has reiterated those things. I think Rick Lazarus made a really great chronology of the neighborhood, showing that the argument that, this is age-old agricultural land isn't exactly, there's a lot of different things going on there. So we welcome some sort of agricultural enterprise if it has integrity, if it's honest, if it's safe, if it's something that feels real. And our town really doesn't. Our town has the ability to make that decision right now and to support us and our needs. I know my power has been set. You don't need me to list off all the things that I've already said in my letter, but there's definitely been a lot of suffering and what feels like lack of safety. And I think our town can really help winnow through what this process is going to look like moving forward until we can see that this is truly an agricultural enterprise and there's not something to be afraid of. And then apply again. That would be great. That's fine. It's just hope that our town can have the opportunity to do that. And that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you for your input. Is there anybody else that wanted to speak at privilege of the floor?
Yeah, hi, this is Margaret Corbett. Again, thank you for giving us this opportunity. I attended probably in 2019, Monica Roth came out and talked about ag districts to the town in an evening meeting, and she went over everything, and she talked about how the county was consolidating the ag districts, and that she had in fact actually suggested to the sheep farm, which is the only farm in our area in the district, suggested to them that they withdraw. They had personal reasons for not doing that, but she did make that query. And really, we're a forested area with poor soils, and if you look at all of the maps, which I pointed out in the plan for the Agriculture and Farm Protection Board, we're in none of their priority areas. There's no reason for them to bend over backwards. My suspicion is that normally these things just get rubber stamped and go through if you make an application. And we're sort of bucking the norm here, and we're hoping that we'll be listened to.
Thank you for your input. Is there anybody else that wanted to speak at privilege of the floor? And
in the chat, Annie,
Graham is asking.
Savia wanted to talk.
Graham, you're the staff at CCE. So I'm thinking once we get this get these on the floor. Well, I don't know. What do you think, Deborah? Should we get them on one of the resolutions on the floor, or could we have?
I think Graham can speak along with Mila, and that way he's not limited to 3 minutes if he has more to say.
Okay, Graham, did you want to speak now or when we bring up certain resolutions?
I'm happy to wait. I just wanted to, I wasn't sure of the protocol.
Okay, yeah, so when we get to each resolution, we'll bring them each on the floor, and then we'll allow input from the staff at CCE plus Scott, our planning department. Mila, did you want to do the same or speak now?
I will speak when I'm going to give this long presentation, so you'll hear me plenty.
Okay. All righty, so let's move on. We're going to go to the first resolution, which is on package page 20, if you're looking at the agenda. And that's making a negative determination of environmental significance in relation to resolution adding 13.6 acres of land in the town of Ithaca to the Tompkins County Agricultural District. Would anybody like to bring that on the floor? Deborah, seconded by Amanda. Okay, so who would like to tell us a little bit about this one?
I can run this through, and I've got maps and all the presentation materials for it. So
Great.
if you would allow me to share my screen. Oh, I can share my screen. There we go. Let me make this in full screen view. Here's my full screen. There we go. All right. So so here we have part one. So there's 3 different things that we'll be bringing forward about Ag District. So just as a quick overview, the landowner who runs a 55.3 acre berry farm and an orchard in Ag District 2 purchased an adjacent 13.6 acre parcel to increase the size of her farm. And she'd like the new parcel to be added to the Ag District. Town of Ithaca reviewed a request, no objections. We have the maps and the application. We have owner correspondence in your packet. I wanted to update you that the AFPB unanimously voted to recommend this property for inclusion in the district. It met all the criteria of being, land that had good agricultural value. So I just have I know that the agenda packet's really long, so I put kind of a cheat sheet here on the screen where all the things are for this particular piece. I'm not including all of them in this presentation, but this is there for you guys to refer back to if need be. So let's see, moving on to the next. Where's my next? Let me go to the next page. Let me go next. There we go, next page. So just for a little context, here we are. This little blue rectangle is approximately where the property is, right near Buttermilk Falls. Going in, you can see even closer that it's very, very close to Buttermilk Falls. It is this odd shaped piece of property that has this bit of road frontage and then gets bigger in the back. And so that you guys have context, this 55.3 acre parcel is the piece of property that Claire Forrest already owns and runs as a berry farm. And this is what she would like to have added to the district since she added this piece of property to her property portfolio. And so that we have some context about what already exists in the district. This is that 55 acre piece of property in the district. There's all Ag District around here as well. And so this would be filling in that missing piece. And just a little bit of a closer view in case anybody needs that. And we have her application, as you saw in your packet. Everything's in order. We had the CEF that Scott prepared. And I don't know, Scott, do you want to speak to that at all?
No, I'll let that speak for itself.
Okay.
Thanks for those maps, Mila. Those were really helpful.
Okay, I'm happy to flip back to them if anybody needs to rest on those while you discuss.
Okay, thank you. Do any legislators have questions? Okay, if we're ready to vote. All right, Deborah?
Yes.
Amanda?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
And I'm a yes, so that's unanimous. Okay, resolution adding 13.6 acres of land. And this is on page 27 in the agenda packet, if anybody's looking on. So that's adding 13.6 acres of land in the town of Ithaca to Tompkins County Agricultural District, which is the land we were just talking about. Is there anything else you wanted to add, or okay? And legislators, do we have any questions on that resolution?
We just need to move it.
Let's move that.
I'll second.
Deborah first and Amanda seconds that. Okay, any questions before we vote? All right, let's start the vote here. Dan?
Yes.
Amanda?
Yes.
Deborah?
Yes.
And I'm a yes, so that passes unanimously. Okay, we're going to go to the next resolution, which
I'd like to move that resolution, please.
Pardon me?
I would like to move the next resolution.
Okay, do we have a second? Deborah? So that's on the packet page 43. That's making a negative declaration of environmental significance in relation to the resolution, which will add 1.47 acres of land in the town of Danby to the Tompkins County Agricultural District. Mila, would you like to tell us a little bit about that one?
Yeah, so first a little bit of number correction. So the GIS mapping and the deed sometimes have subtle acreage differences. So the 1.47 acres is the GIS map acreage, but the actual deed indicates the 1.35 acres, or the and the landowner noted 1.34 acres in the application, which is where that number came from. So Scott recommended that maybe we go with the 1.35 acres that are written in the deed for this. So there'd have to be a correction to the resolution for that.
Okay, would anybody like to, so the correct number is 1.35?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, would anybody like to, so we'd have to amend that in the title. Let's see. And
It's friendly, Ann.
Yes, it is.
Okay, so to change that and is it in more than one place?
As we go through, I'll see, I know in my summary, it exists as 1.35, and then in the CEF, I believe it's 1.47. So
Okay.
we're just all going to agree to go with the 1.35, and that was Scott's recommendation. He's the one who prepared the CEF.
Okay, so just looking at as far as the clerk's keeping track of it, it looks like it would be changing in the title from 1.47 to 1.35. It doesn't look like it's referenced anywhere else in the resolution. Okay, does that sound okay? Kathy?
Yes, yes, Ann.
Okay,
Thank you.
all righty. All right, go ahead, Mila.
Okay, so now that that housekeeping is done, I can give a summary. So the landowner purchased this 1.35 acre property near but not adjacent to their existing 94 acre agricultural property on East Miller Road. And this property happens to be on Danby Road. Their aim was to create increased visibility for their farm by having a nearby parcel with road frontage on a higher traffic road. The 1.35 acre parcel holds a building with a rental apartment and a farm store. And on the property, they've established a berry patch and intend to plant more. And the rear property line, should be noted, borders on the ag district. So this wouldn't be kind of a parcel in the middle of nowhere. It's actually bordering along its long edge, and you'll see that in the maps. The AFPB had quite a bit of discussion about this because on the one hand, while it's clearly an ag and ag related use for the area, some of our farmers are so used to very, very large sprawling farm properties. And so there was some consideration about whether 1.3 acres is too small for adequate farming. Excuse me. In the end, the AFPB members voted 7-1 to recommend the inclusion. So going through, just so you have some context, That little blue square is approximately where it is along Route 96B in the town of Danby. Coming in closer, you can see a little bit more, like here's East Miller Road that I referenced. And then this will show you exactly where that piece of property is, that small parcel, in relation to the 94-acre ag parcel that the owners already own. And then just as a note, this parcel back here is in ag use and is an ag district. So this map right here shows you in red right there, that's where that little parcel is, and all the rest of it is in ag district. We have their application, everything on this was in order. We have their CEF, and that should be in order. Here's just a satellite photo, and then I have a pause to discuss.
And I didn't, unless I'm missing something, I didn't see any feedback from the town or from neighbors. Is that correct? Okay.
The town of Danby did actually express support for adding this to the.
Oh, that's right. I listened to their town board where they talked about the two parcels. So thank you, Scott.
Annie?
Yes.
I do note that in the resolution regarding the negative declaration, on line 4, we do have to correct the acreage to 1.35.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
And again, just to get ahead of ourselves, if you go to the resolution to actually add this, the acreage is recited on line 15 of that as 1.34, and it just needs to be corrected to 1.35.
When do we get to the next resolution?
Yeah, just so that you know, it's not just in the title.
Okay, great. Okay, so getting back to this resolution, any other questions or comments from legislators? Okay, so why don't we vote on this? Dan?
Yes.
Amanda?
Yes.
Deborah?
Yes.
And I'm a yes, so that's unanimous on making a negative determination for that property. The next resolution is on package page 50.
I would like to move that resolution, Ann.
Okay, Dan is moving that one. Do we have a second? Amanda seconding that. And so would anybody like to make an amendment changing in the title and on line 15 of that resolution to change it to 1.35 acres?
I'll move that, Annie.
Deborah and Amanda and Dan, is that friendly?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so that's changing that from 1.34 to 1.35 acres. Alrighty, any, so let's do, so we had a presentation on that one. Any questions by legislators? Okay, so we'll take a vote on this resolution on adding 1.35 acres of land in the town of Danby. Dan?
Yes.
Amanda?
Yes.
Deborah?
Yes.
And I'm a yes, so that's passes unanimously. Now we're on to resolution E. That's packet page 67. And this is making a negative determination of environmental significance in relation to the resolution, which adds 74.19 acres of land in the town of Danby to the Tompkins County Agricultural District. Can we have somebody move that?
I'll move it in.
Would anybody like to second that? This is the making the negative determination of environmental significance. We lost Amanda.
And I can second that.
Okay, thanks, Dan.
Yes.
Sorry, my puppy was crying.
Well, we all have our priorities. I put Buttercup out on the porch. Okay, so Amanda, we just moved and got the negative declaration of environmental significance in relation to the 74.1 acre parcel in Danby. So that's on the floor right now. And Mila, would you like to make a presentation on that one too?
Sure. And so I wanted to give you folks a little more context because this this property has caused an enormous amount of discussion amongst the AFPB as well as the general public and at Danby Town board meetings and so on. And so it really it called for those of us serving on Ag and Farmland Protection Board to really look at what we're being asked to do as a board. And we ended up talking with Jeff Kehoe over at Ag and Markets in Albany about this at great length to discuss really where our parameters lie, because there really was such discussion about this. So what he reminded us is that the role of the Ag and Farmland Protection Board, and you'll see the parameters are on this page and the next, is limited to ascertaining whether the land to be included in the agricultural district consists predominantly of viable agricultural land. And there's a definition for viable agricultural land. And then that the inclusion of such land would serve the public interest by assisting in maintaining a viable agricultural industry within the district. So we are being asked as Ag and Farmland Protection Board simply decide whether the land itself is viable, not whether the practices on it are acceptable to the town or whether they're good neighbors, but whether the land itself is viable. In fact, at some point, Jeff was saying it's really more of a judgment of the land itself, not the owner of the land who's making the application. So with that lens, the Ag and Farmland Protection Board looked closely at the land itself to see where it stands. So let me pull that up. It's way down here. Oh, sorry, that still leads me to the road. Here we go. Okay, so for some background, the property is isolated from a lot of the rest of the agricultural district and surrounded by forest land. Historically, it was a horse farm with some hay fields, and a number of years ago it was purchased. The horse barn was kind of upgraded or changed into a warehouse structure that was used for drying hemp. A section of the field was gravelled over in order to accommodate large trucks moving back and forth. The warehouse was used for hemp drying and drew much controversy from neighbors who contend that the operation is more industrial than agricultural in nature. The property has a new owner as of October 2020. However, the new owner is part of the same ownership group that held the property before. So, so there is technically a change in ownership, but in practice, the ownership group is the same. Let's see, some of the property that was in hay previously might still be in hay, and the Ag District Inclusion application lists a large number of agricultural activities the owner intends to pursue, including livestock and vegetable farming. No additional details were provided. So AFPB met online and then met again online. We discussed, voted to exclude it from the district, and 2 members voted to include it. But then additional information was received. So that was after we had that discussion. It was voted to exclude it, but then we heard back from Jeff Kehoe at Ag and Markets to really look at the role AFPB plays is very narrow about the land itself. And based on that narrow definition of viable agricultural land, we reopened the discussion on the 24th of March. So based on that definition alone, not taking into account determination by the town or objections of neighbors, the AFPB determined that it is a viable piece of agricultural land So what we'd like to do is we'd like to make note that while AFPB did vote that it is viable agricultural land that could be included in the ag district, non-agricultural practices in the property would not be protected through inclusion in the ag district. And that because it is not our role to take in consideration of the town or the neighbors, the final decision really rests with our county legislature. So that is the background for how we came to the conclusion that yes, it is viable and could be admitted into the ag district, but the rest lies to you. So some context, here's that 94-acre property. Most of the ag district is up here and up here. There's a couple pieces here that were admitted, but most of this is still forested land. As you can see, there's this property, and it really is a lot of forested land. A little bit closer, so you see the nature of what we have there. This is the property, these are the soils, and the soils are viable agricultural soil. This is from our property mapping software, so that we can see exactly where it is and what its limits are. This was the application placed by the owner, and you'll notice that they listed cash crop grains, cash crop hay, cash crop vegetable, livestock beef, livestock sheep, poultry, and other, but no other additional details were provided. We have our CEF that you have in your packet, and we can pause here and I guess open discussion. I know Graham has some things that he'd like to add to this. If there's anybody else who has questions, we did include, not in this presentation, but in the packet, copies of the correspondence that we received, both from neighbors, but also from the town of Danby itself, because the town does have objections to this being admitted to the district.
Thank you. And yes, and legislators have, from this committee, have individually received input from the community on this. And after Graham, I think Scott Doyle from our planning department also wanted to speak on this property. Graham?
Annie, could I just interrupt for a second and ask that the screen sharing be stopped so we can
Sure.
see folks? Thank you.
Okay. So I see a couple legislators have their hands up, but let's, if we could wait till we have Graham and then Scott speak. Graham, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Thanks all for considering this somewhat complicated case. I'm actually not going to say much because Mila has laid it out really well. Most of what I had thought to say, Mila has covered. The only other point I would add is one of the primary reasons why the AFPB voted in favor of recommending the inclusion of this property is because despite the argument that because it's far from other portions of the ag district, it shouldn't be a part of the ag district, there are certain operations, in particular hemp production and CBD production, which actually benefit from being far from other operations, multiple miles away from other hemp and CBD operations. So in terms of this being a viable agricultural property, it most certainly is. That is the extent of the AFPB's determination. The determination of whether it should be in the ag district is up to you folks, and it should take into account the perspectives of everyone at this hearing and all of the perspectives that you've heard. But yeah, thanks Mila for laying this out really clearly and laying out the scope of the AFPB's role in this process.
Thank you, Graham. Scott, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Just very minor. I think these folks did a great job outlining that, because yes, the reason you're seeing this now is because the majority of the board, not the entire board, felt that those two questions in terms of viable ag land and viable ag industry, there was enough to support it coming to you. Certainly the case could be made and was made at the meeting that because of its isolation, it wasn't as viable, but the majority of folks felt otherwise. in terms of the industry too, there was some concern about a changing industry, or so the application indicated, that is questionable in terms of the ag industry, the viable ag industry there. But nonetheless, the majority of the board voted to move it to you. New York State Ag and Markets has us answer those two questions at the Ag and Farmland Board level, but is clear that you are not bound to that as a county legislature, that you can take into account a broader context of things, not just those two agricultural questions. That's my only points.
Thank you, Scott. Deborah, Mila, did you want to add something first?
Yeah, I do believe that Scott forwarded to you some correspondence from Jason Leifer regarding this property, and there's one piece of paper attached to it's the very last sheet, I believe, of that document that he sent, which is what we call our Ag and Farmland Protection Board criteria for evaluation. And that is not a form that is given to the public to fill out. That is a form that it's actually even a form. It's a kind of a list of questions that guide our discussion as the Ag and Farmland Protection Board. And you'll see that in the correspondence that Mr. Leifer submitted to you folks, there is that criteria form filled out with their answers, his answers and the landowner's answers. And I just wanted to really make sure that it is crystal clear to everybody here reviewing that piece of paper is not one that the public is meant to fill out. It's meant to be an internal document, and it was filled out by the representative of the landowner. So it does not represent what we discussed at AFPP.
All right, thank you for that clarification. Deborah?
Yeah, thanks, Annie. I want to thank Mila and Scott and Graham and everyone who worked on this very difficult situation. And I want to thank the neighbors for taking such great pains to keep us informed of their perspective. I will be voting in favor of the negative declaration, but against the actual addition to the ag sector. I appreciate the AFPB didn't have a lot of choice given the way their review was focused by ag and markets, but the county has a broader scope of authority and responsibility. And to me, this particular parcel is quite a bit different from the other two that we just passed. It's not contiguous to any actively farmed land, and it is not currently actively farmed. It's not approved by the town at all. In fact, the town is very much against this, and I think it's our responsibility to take the town's preferences into account. The neighbors are very much against this, and I can certainly understand why, given the history that these people have informed us of. I feel strongly that unless and until these owners can establish a track record of actually pursuing approved agricultural activities on this land, we would be ill-advised to grant the addition of this property, especially since it does seem to me that this application is designed to simply get around the town's opposition to the use that they want to put this property to. And in response to Mr. Leifer's submission on behalf of his clients, citing the purposes of the right to farm legislation that the town passed, I think that's the town's legislation. It's up to them to decide how it should be interpreted and applied. And it's not my problem as a member of the legislature to say, no, you're doing this wrong. So for all of those reasons, again, I will be supporting the negative declaration resolution because there's no reason not to do that, but I will be voting against the addition of this land to the Ag District. Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah. I just wanted to make a quick clarification that I don't believe the town needs to approve it, but they did pass a resolution not supporting it. Okay, thank you. Martha?
Thank you, Annie. Thank you for letting me have a word here. It's actually a couple questions. I guess to Mila or Graham. Some neighbors said, well, if they prove that they are actually doing agricultural activities, when they could reapply, when's the next time period when they could reapply if they're actually doing that?
Every February, on the February 1st starts a 30-day period. So it goes from February 1st until March 2nd each year.
Okay, so Cooperative Extension always does a holistic review of ag parcels. That's like every 5 years or something, but
each district gets a holistic review every 8 years, and we have 2 districts, so we have them staggered. So every 4 years you get to see us do a very, very large review. In the in-between years, any property owner can petition for the admission of their parcel into the district, and that happens on February 1st through March 2nd every single year.
Okay, so the damage here, if they're turned down, is they can wait and do this in a year from now. When you mentioned, I think it was you mentioned that if it is approved for an ag district, there would not be protection for non-agricultural activities. Is that what you said?
Mm-hmm.
So one of my understanding is that being in the ag district, one of the main benefits is a tax benefit. No, the taxes are not changed based on
Tax assessment designation is totally different and totally separate from this, and they're not linked in any way. They can still apply for a tax assessment and a reduction, and thereby a reduction in their taxes.
Okay, whether they're in this district or not. Okay, great. That's very helpful. And then I guess this is this a privilege or a right to be identified as part of an ag district? It seems, I didn't read Jason Leifer's document, but if there were some sort of a lawsuit proposed here, if they didn't get the district, I would think, so this is not an as of right kind of decision. Is that correct? That there is discretion. Okay. All right. Appreciate it. Thanks so much. Oh, one more thing. If this doesn't come out of committee, it doesn't come to the full legislature. Is that right? Okay.
That is my understanding.
That's
Thank
correct.
Okay, any other questions or comments from legislators?
Yes.
Dan, go ahead.
Thank you. Just 2 quick things. I just also want to say, as Deborah said, one could vote in favor of the resolution before us right now, the determination of environmental significance, but then vote differently on the mission of the actual parcel. I just wanted to say that myself. Thank you, Deborah. And then the other thing I just want to mention is that there were some correspondence from the neighbors in the agenda packet, but there were also some emails that didn't make it into the agenda packet from some neighbors. So I just want to mention that. And if any of those neighbors, wanted to get on the record, there could still potentially be an opportunity. They could ask that those emails be entered into the record, and maybe it wouldn't get onto this meeting, but it could be entered into the record another time. I just wanted to mention that. One of the neighbors contacted me and said that their comments hadn't gotten to the packet. No big deal. Just wanted to mention it. Thank you.
And so I don't know if Kathy's right there, but how would they? What would the procedure for them getting into the record, Kathy? If people from the public wanted to still have their emails submitted for the record for this committee?
Either comments can be submitted to be read, or they could attend a meeting to provide public comment.
So they'd submit them, but we could include them in the next meeting?
Committee agenda packet, yes.
Okay. But just to let folks know, if you sent something, we did read them. Looks like, are we ready to vote then? This is the resolution on making the negative determination of environmental significance. And this is for the 74.19 acres of land in the town of Danby on Howland Road. So let's see, Deborah,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Amanda?
Yes.
And I'm a yes, so that passes unanimously. So now we're on to the resolution adding, for the same property, adding the 74.19 acres of land in the town of Danby, the Tompkins County Agricultural District. And this is ID 10080, and that's on packet page 74. Could someone move that? Amanda, seconded by Deborah. Any discussion from legislators? Okay, seems like we had our discussion already. So let's go ahead and vote on this. Deborah?
No.
Amanda?
No.
Dan?
No.
And I'm a no, so that does not pass. And as we said before, they can resubmit for that, and it does not affect their ability to apply for an assessment.
But it passed.
There's an email from Jonathan I can forward to you.
Okay, so the next resolution is on packet page 95, scheduling a public hearing for proposed 2021 additions to the Tompkins County Agricultural District, ID 10073. Can someone move that? Amanda, seconded by Dan? Okay, and would someone like to make an amendment to take out the Howland Road property? So let me get to the right page.
It's on page 95 of the packet.
Right. So that would be on line 14 and 15 about taking out that property parcel number 29, parcel number 29.-1-4.22. Would anybody like to amend taking that out of the public hearing?
I'll move that be removed, Danny.
Would anybody like to second that? Amanda? Okay, so thank you for making that amendment. And so let's vote on the, well, is that friendly with the first and seconder? Since they're the ones, I think it was you two that did the moved and seconded. Okay.
We are not conflicted with ourselves. No.
You're not conflicted with yourselves. That's good.
Sometime.
Not today. Okay. Any objections to that being a friendly amendment? Okay, just want to make sure. Any discussion on this one from legislators? Any questions or discussion on the public hearing? Okay, let's vote on this. Dan?
Yes.
Amanda?
Yes.
Deborah?
Yes.
And I'm a yes, so that passes unanimously. So thank you very much, Graham and Mila and Scott, for all your work on this, and Mila especially for doing all the presentations, and you and Graham and for compiling all this information. I know it was a lot of information that you presented to us, plus a lot of work behind the scenes. So I really appreciate that. It's really helpful to the committee that you're doing all this work in advance. So thank you.
You're welcome. I'm happy to be here.
Okay, so next on our agenda, we're going to go backwards to the resolution adopting a minimally invasive policy for managing the Tompkins County Forest. That's on packet page 18. And just for the note for the minutes, that is not part of the Planning and Sustainability Department. That is a member filed resolution from Deborah Dawson.
With input from Dan Klein.
With input from Dan Klein. And that's packet page 18. So give me a second. Let me get that open.
Move it.
Okay.
Second it.
Moving it. Deborah is seconding it. Okay. David, we don't, I see David has his hand up. Generally, we don't do public input during, we try and do it at the beginning, but I think today we've done things a little bit unusually by setting the precedent where we have been having people speak. So for today, we'll go ahead. Would you like to speak for a few minutes? You can have.
Yeah, thank you. I'll just be brief. I just wanted to put in some more context before you really discuss this. The goals of the report that the Environmental Management Council produced last year were to identify the different options that could be pursued for the county forest lands and to provide the scientific support behind each of these options. Secondly, to identify what outcomes were likely to happen if a particular option was chosen. And third, to make sure that the actions chosen by the legislature were in fact supported by the consensus scientific information available. Now, rereading the EMC report, and in particular the executive summary, I have to say myself that I think the EMC did an excellent job at accomplishing these goals. The resolution that's being put forth is in keeping with the ideas that are laid out in the report. I just wanted to clarify a couple of things just for your knowledge in terms of moving forward. In particular, in the first resolved, you have a comment that the policy should be without commercial logging activities. Now, if there are going to be some tree cutting in the red pines, I'm not sure what your definition of commercial logging activities are. I mean, I think you meant that it was, a major logging activity with major equipment, but anytime you pay people to go into a forest to cut trees, it's a commercial activity. So I don't know if that needs modification or not. Secondly, you guys have listed in the things that could be done is the potential selling of carbon offset credits. Well, in the rules that lay down for carbon offset credits by RGGI and other organizations, you can't claim carbon offset credits by allowing natural activities to happen, even if those natural activities result in accumulation of carbon in a forest, in this example. You have to actually do active management and change the rate at which carbon would be accumulating outside of the natural process. And lastly, I think you need to recognize that it's important that by choosing the option that's outlined in the resolution, you will be foregoing the ability to accelerate the development of an older growth forest. The report lays out the kinds of things that would be done to accelerate that. And since making an older growth forest is one of the stated goals in the resolution, I just wanted to make sure you understood that you are going to be foregoing that ability to accelerate movement toward that older growth forest, excuse me. Thank you.
Thank you, David.
And you're on mute.
Thank you. Was there anybody else that wanted to speak on public comment for this resolution? Okay.
Just got her hand up.
So it's on the floor. And so now I'm going to open it up if any legislators would like to speak on this. Martha?
I'll wait for committee members.
Martha, go ahead.
All right, thanks. I'm looking at packet page 19, line 8. I understand the interest in acknowledging the position of the town of Caroline. But when it comes to acknowledging residents who spoke in public, we don't usually only recognize people who spoke on one side of an issue when there were clearly people who spoke on both sides. So I just put into chat a slight modification of that whereas to say the many county residents, the county acknowledges the many county residents who attended public meetings to express their perspectives on the future of the county forests. Rather than just to say we acknowledge the ones who spoke for leaving it alone, because there really were a lot of people who spoke on both sides. So I would suggest that as a friendly change. And if that doesn't get approved here, I'll probably put it on the floor at the legislature meeting.
Thanks, Martha. I'll leave it up to committee members if anybody wants to propose that change. Any other legislators that would like to speak on this? Dan? And then Deborah?
Thank you. I have a few proposed amendments. I'm going to start with the easy one, I think, and work towards the harder ones. So the easy one.
Dan, can I ask you first, because we are almost 10 minutes behind schedule right now. How many amendments do you have?
3.
Were these sent out to members?
No.
Okay. All right, we'll see if we can get through this fairly quickly. Okay, go ahead.
So I believe it's the 12th whereas that begins on February 12th, 2020, the Caroline Town Board. And then it continues with a pro-forestation policy. I would like to propose that we insert right after that in parentheses, quote, growing existing forests intact to their ecological potential. And in other words, that's just the definition of pro-forestation. We used the term in there, but we didn't define it. So that's all. I'm hoping that's a non-controversial one.
Can you say it again, please?
Yes. After.
What line?
It's line 3. It's on packet page 19, line 3. Recommendations of a hands-off policy to promote a pro-forestation strategy, parentheses, growing existing forests intact to their ecological potential, close parentheses.
I think what you really want is brackets, Dan.
That's fine.
And I would put it on line 4 after pro-forestation policy, because you can't really put it in the title of their resolution. I would have no problem if you wanted to define a pro-forestation policy as the Caroline Town Board understands it, as leaving forests intact to grow to their ecological potential. As far as I'm concerned, that would be friendly.
Okay.
Yeah, friendly to me too, along with the brackets and the putting it in line 4.
Dan, I'm just gonna let you know, I'm gonna vote against that because I don't have, I wish you had sent these ahead of time. I don't have time to look up the definition or talk to other people about the definition of proforestation,
Okay.
finding it.
Well, so then you're not finding it friendly, so we do need to vote on that amendment, correct?
It's not, it's not up to me whether it's, well, I guess it's not up to me. Yeah, I guess I would.
No, if
would
any
not
one
find it friendly,
person,
right?
if any one person doesn't find it friendly, then we have to vote on that
Right.
amendment.
Right, exactly. Thank you, Amanda. So let's,
So we'll need a second.
I second it.
Thank you.
any other questions or discussion on that amendment? Martha?
Yeah, I don't know what ecological potential means. I think that's maybe Caroline, growing existing forests intact might be more accurate.
So
potential is sort of on, sounds like that.
Dear God, people, we've been working on this thing for 2 years. Can we just please?
Martha, Deborah, point of order, please.
Yes, I know.
If we're looking to be non-controversial, that's all I'm saying.
So and may I?
Sure.
The Caroline Town Board was quoting a specific scientific paper about proforestation. So that's in the first sentence of that paper. That's what they were quoting. I didn't make the words up. That's why I hoped it wouldn't be controversial, because I didn't make it up.
Okay, are we ready to vote? Okay. Amanda?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Deborah?
Yes.
And I'm a no. Okay, next amendment, Dan?
Well, I'm going to start the amendment with a question. So last time I tried to insert the word old growth into the title, and there was some resistance to that. I guess I would like to ask, what is the resistance? Why don't people want to insert the word old growth into the title?
I'm not myself, I'm not gonna entertain a discussion on that. I feel we've had that discussion, so. I'm done talking about it. Deborah?
Yeah, I mean, Dan and I have discussed this extensively between the two of us. We had exchanges as late as last week. I just think this is something we're going to have to agree to disagree on. You know, the best scientific information that the EMC report provides us with suggests that this is a secondary forest and it will never be an old growth forest for that reason. It can be managed for older growth characteristics, but that's as far as I'm willing to go.
I'd like to ask you one more question, if I may, then. When you say it's never going to be an old growth forest, I guess that's a statement, but what is the reasoning for saying that? Like, what, project yourself 200 years in the future. Why is it not an old growth forest at that point?
I will say a comment to that there's a very good chance that in 5 to 10 years, we're going to review and update this policy. So I don't think we need to actually think out that far when it comes to our wording on this. We're getting, by this policy, we're getting what you brought up, Dan, as far as you wanted your overall goal for the, I'm not saying, I won't say just yours. We came to a compromise, I believe, for something that we thought we could agree on for the forests going in the next, few years. And so I don't see why we should mince words here. Any other legislators? Amanda?
Yeah, maybe this isn't going to be a popular idea, but there's only 4 of us here, and I wonder, Dan, if your amendments might be better suited for the whole legislature. If we pass this now, Deborah rolls her eyes, but you know, I don't know. I mean, I'm guessing that they may not pass the full legislature, but if I agree with you and they vote against it, they're not going to pass. So I don't know. I don't know if just throwing that out there, but.
Well, if they don't pass, he's always free to bring them up then too. But thanks for pointing that out, Amanda.
I guess I'm still trying to understand your answers. This is the committee where we're supposed to work out some of the details. And I took some notes from last month. I don't remember you addressing the issue of why you're opposed to the term old growth. Maybe you did and I didn't get it down. I don't have that written down. Can you state for the record, this is my amendment to insert the word old growth into the title. So I'm trying to understand why you object to it, or if you object to it. I guess you haven't even stated yet if you object to it.
I defer to our liaison committee and our experts that have talked about this.
Okay. I have a statement I'd like to read then. Ann?
Martha, did you have your hand up? No? Okay, go ahead, Dan.
Okay. Last month, when I asked to insert the term old growth into the title of the resolution, it started a debate about the meaning of the term and whether or not this 90-year-old forest would ever become something called old growth, or was the best we could hope to achieve something called old growth characteristics. Subsequent emails over the last month continued the discussion with David Weinstein and Martha Robertson saying essentially that the only old growth we might ever have was the tiny bit of forest still in existence from the 1700s, and that there would never be new old growth. I would like to make the case why we could and should insert the term old growth into the title of the resolution. So let's start with the reality. The year is 2021, and we have 90-year-old trees. The question is, what will we have if we more or less don't touch these trees for another 90 years? I say that we will have something that we should be able to call old growth by then. And I would like to share some of what I found from others who believe this concept also, that if you leave a forest undisturbed, it likely develops into one with a diversity of tree sizes and ages, a high number of large standing dead trees, a high number of down logs and snags, and a high number of old trees. In other words, an old growth forest. What does the average person mean when they say old growth? Merriam-Webster dictionary definition of old growth is, quote, a forest characterized by the presence of large old trees, numerous, and that it is usually in a late stage of ecological succession, unquote. Wikipedia says, quote, an old growth forest is a forest that has attained great age without a significant disturbance, close quotes. Is there only one definition for old growth? The answer is emphatically no. David Hianek, writing for the Earth Law Center, says, quote, contrary to popular belief, experts struggle to define old growth forests, close quotes. Valerie Rapp with the U.S. Forest Service Research and Development Agency says, quote, multiple definitions of old growth forest are needed, close quotes. There is only one national forest in New York State, the Finger Lakes National Forest. Their management plan defines old growth forest as, quote, a patch of relatively old forest of at least 5 to 10 acres that has escaped catastrophic or stand replacing disturbance associated with the prevailing natural disturbance regimes of the forest. Such old growth stands exhibit a long history of continuity and a demonstrated future via replacement dynamics. There is every reason to believe that this describes the county forest in the next century. Dr. William Keaton is cited 21 times in the Environmental Management Council report about the county forest. Dr. Keaton is a forest researcher in Vermont. He also happens to have grown up in Ithaca, New York. I know Dr. Keaton a little bit. I worked for his mother for many years. She died last month, by the way, in case anyone knew Bobby Keaton. I just wanted to let you know that. So I reached out to Dr. Keaton, and I asked him his thoughts about old growth versus old growth characteristics. He said, quote, "There are many definitions of old growth. My opinion is that old growth is simply a developmental condition," close quotes. I have more to say about Dr. Keaton shortly. In a recent email, we were told by David Weinstein, quote, "Barring intervening disturbances, the older growth stage may be reached in mixed stands in several hundred years," from Oliver, 1981, close quotes. When he says Oliver, 1981, he is citing a specific scientific paper. So I looked up Oliver, 1981. What it actually says is, quote, "After disturbances, forests develop through physiognomic stages, including," quote, "old growth." The term older growth is not used at all in that paper, so I'm not sure why it was put in quotes in that recent email to us. The term old growth, however, is used 9 times in that Oliver paper. So Oliver, who is cited by our experts, is comfortable with the term old growth, as are many other forest researchers. In the EMC report, Fisher Woods is referred to as older growth. Fisher Woods is one of 2 30-acre patches of remnant old growth forest in Tompkins County. It is owned by Cornell University. Cornell University itself refers to it as old growth. They do not refer to it as older growth. The other 30-acre patch of remnant old growth in our county is Smith Woods. The EMC report also refers to Smith Woods as older growth. Smith Woods is owned by the Paleological Research Institute, who itself refers to Smith Woods as old growth. They do not use the term older growth. We were also sent an email recently that says, quote, "Figure 9 of the EMC report shows a schematic of the steps in the development of a forest as it goes from seedling sapling stage to the older growth stage." And figure 15 of the report, taken from D'Amato and Catanzaro 2006, depicts the timeline by which this development would happen, close quotes. I looked up D'Amato and Catanzaro 2006. The chart does not say older growth stage. The chart says, quote, "old growth restoration," close quotes. D'Amato and Catanzaro 2006 is cited 6 times in the EMC report and has been mentioned in the emails of the last month as the true definition of old growth. In that paper, the term old growth restoration is used 12 times. The word characteristics is used 1 time. Which brings me to my final point on this topic. What should we call what we are doing? Our forests are mostly 90 years old. No one is claiming that they should be called old growth at this stage. A phrase I see being used a lot as I've done research is restoration. Let's consider that word. One thing we've been told is that an old growth forest might need to contain legacy trees. A legacy tree, which is another non-precisely defined term, basically means an old tree. There are trees in Tompkins County right now that are 300 years old. Clearly, they are legacy trees. Our 90-year-old forest does not contain any legacy trees, but they will someday. The 300-year-old trees that we currently have, the legacy trees that we currently have right now, will likely not survive another 100 years. Those particular trees will probably be gone But at that point, our current forests will be 200 years old. At some point, they become the legacy trees. So today we don't have old growth in the county forest, but someday we will, and there is really no good reason to believe otherwise. What is the point in a practical or in a scientific sense of insisting that only forests that contain trees from the 1700s deserve the title of old growth? Those trees will die soon in terms of tree lifespans. And when the last of those trees from the 1700s dies, does that mean we have no old growth forest left? That is an absurd proposition, both scientifically and practically. We are attempting to restore old growth. The EMC report cites a research paper by Hagen and Whitman and uses their chart to show the stages of forest regeneration after agriculture. And it culminates with, quote, old growth, unquote. It's right there in the EMC report. Land cut for agriculture and then abandoned to forest, such as is the case with the county forest, will achieve a state called old growth. The EMC report also contains a chart from the notorious D'Amato and Catanzaro, which is titled, quote, old growth restoration gradient, unquote. It is right there in the EMC report. Valerie Rapp, a researcher with the U.S. Forest Service, says today's old growth forests developed along multiple pathways with many low severity and some high severity disturbances along the way. In other words, a high severity disturbance, such as agriculture, does not preclude the eventual restoration of old growth. Dr. Tiara Nydia Moore, a postdoctoral researcher, writes, I work in a restored old growth forest, and decades ago, this forest was clear cut. In the Nature Conservancy news of August 2019, quote, we use passive restoration. In this approach, we allow forest stands to develop without intervention, close quotes. I'm almost finished. The U.S. Forest Service has a publication, quote, guidance for conserving and restoring old growth forest communities on national forests, close quotes. Let's come back to Dr. Keaton, cited 21 times in the EMC report. He has quite a bit to say about old growth restoration. Now, just to be clear, he believes there are ways to log a forest that may speed up development of old growth characteristics. And I suspect that's why some people are very fond of him. But he's also absolutely clear that such manipulation is not necessary and that forests left on their own will likely achieve old growth status too. Here are some final quotes from Dr. Keaton. Quote, old growth continuity can develop as the legacy of land use history fades. For example, in areas we might designate as old growth reserves, close quote. New quote from Dr. Keaton. Quote, but can we actually restore old growth? In fact, the proposition that we might one day restore eastern old growth is no longer theoretical, as was the case when the idea was originally proposed several decades ago, close quote. Last quote from Dr. Keaton, I am absolutely of the opinion that we can restore old growth forests. I believe I have shown that A, although the term old growth is not precisely defined, it is freely, easily, and widely used by the scientific community, by the professional forest community, by the general public, and by numerous researchers and research papers directly cited in the EMC report. B, that at some time in the future, if these forests are protected, they will achieve a state that we should be comfortable calling old growth. And C, therefore, what we are attempting to accomplish here is the restoration of old growth, a concept wholeheartedly endorsed by the scientific community, the professional forest community, the not-for-profit conservation agencies, the U.S. Forest Service, the general public, by several researchers directly cited in the EMC report, including D'Amato and Catanzaro themselves. Therefore, I would like to move an amendment to change the title of this resolution to Adoption of a Policy to Manage the County-Owned Forests for Old Growth Restoration with minimal human intervention and without commercial logging.
Do we have any second on that?
can you read it again?
Yes. The new title would be Adoption of a Policy to Manage the County-Owned Forests for Old Growth Restoration with Minimal Human Intervention and Without Commercial Logging.
I will second that.
Thank you.
Okay, let's vote. Any discussion on that amendment? Any other discussion? Okay, let's take a vote. Deborah?
No.
Amanda?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
I vote no, so that does not pass. Or do you have any other amendments? Dan?
I guess I'll save them for another day, Ann.
Okay, thank you, Dan. All right, so we're back to the main resolution, which is adopting a minimally invasive policy for managing the Tompkins County forests. Are we ready to vote on that?
You just want to specify that that is with Dan's first offered amendment, defining. Yeah, okay.
Correct, thank you. Okay, let's vote on the main resolution. Dan?
Yes.
Amanda?
Very happily, yes.
Deborah?
Yes.
And I'm a yes, so that passes unanimously. Thank you, everybody. We are half an hour suddenly over past our agenda time. Reggie Teasley from EMC messaged me. She will present their report from the EMC next month. And so we have Cynthia Brock, I believe, is going to be from the Water Resources Council. So Cynthia, are you there? So while we wait for Cynthia, because we're going to have to see if she wants to do a really quick one, or we'd have to go overtime, or while we're waiting to see if she chimes in, I'll message her here in the chat. Do we have any, while we're waiting on that, do we have any other committee member reports, or are you ready? Oh, there's Cynthia.
Hi, sorry, I had you all on mute.
No worries. I'm really sorry. We're suddenly got overtime and backed up on our schedule. About how long do you think your presentation would be?
I was asked to answer any questions that you may have, but I'm happy to announce that we have the 2020 annual report for the Water Resources Council, which provides a review of the activities that we did over the past year, keeping in mind that our committee had not met for a good part of the year due to COVID. But in the few months that we were able to meet, we were able to get quite a few things done. Everything from writing letters of support to various organizations, as well as passing resolutions. And I believe we've also done some committee work, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. But it was understandably a pretty sparse year for the committee. We have been very active in the last 6 months or so.
Okay, does anybody have any questions for Cynthia on the Water Resources Council report? Any legislators? Deborah.
I would be interested, actually, not so much, this is not so much a question about the report. I would be interested in hearing what your thoughts are on the TMDL proposal.
Well, it is a document that is a long time in the making, as you know. It's probably a decade or more. Had been informed largely also by the Cayuga Lake HABs management plan or HABs action report that the DEC had put out. There was a fair amount of modeling that were done by various organizations contributing to the report. A lot of the focus is on how can we reduce phosphorus emissions into the lake. And I do believe that there will be impacts on agricultural uses in terms of implementing best management practices. With regards to point sources, I believe there's limited impact to our wastewater treatment plants, although I believe that the Freeville wastewater treatment plant is being asked to adjust their phosphorus output by implementing chemical treatment into their process.
Well, I'm no expert, but my concern is that excluding the point source contributors because of their speedies permits and excluding the CAFOs because they're regulated separately is going to disproportionately burden the smaller farms in our watershed. Has your group discussed that at all?
Well, it is out for public review. There is a very tight timeline in terms of getting comment in. I believe the deadline is next month. So it's quite a lot of material to consume and understand and comment on in a very short period of time. I'm not sure, I guess I would say that in terms of disproportionately impact small farmers. Obviously, as the chair of the board of the Ithaca Area Wastewater Treatment Plant, I would say that we have implemented and have financed significant treatment upgrades in order to achieve our permit requirements. We continue to monitor and maintain those facilities to make sure that we are not emitting into the lake. I think what you are seeing now is a change of focus into areas that are not currently regulated and trying to implement best practices there. In terms of agricultural uses, one of the comments that I find interesting is the assumption that all facilities are always meeting their permits. And as we know, there are instances when events happen and there are accidental discharges, and recognizing, even just by looking into media reports of the recent manure spill, they recognize right away that as climate change brings warmer weather into wintertime, when those breaches happen, they have a larger effect on the lake because those spills are not being contained by snow and ice. They are immediately discharged into the lake. So that's one thing for me that drew my attention. But I guess I just would use the term disproportionate. I don't know that that's actually correct. I think it's a change in focus more than anything.
Well, I guess I'm less concerned about the distinction between point and non-point source than I am about the distinction between assuming that CAFOs are not releasing phosphorus because they're regulated as CAFOs, so that the burden falls on much smaller operators who don't have the financial wherewithal to employ the BMPs that a CAFO could.
Sure, right. And with every increase in regulation, you always hope that there would be financial support in order to allow those organizations to be able to implement those best management practices. So by having regulations without a financial component to them puts everybody in a very difficult bind. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's called an unfunded mandate, I think.
Yeah, and if I could chime in here, Deborah, that is Darby Kiley gave us a report earlier in our meeting about HABs, and that was one of the things we discussed as far as the financing and how it's not anywhere near adequate, but so that's an area that needs to be improved.
Mm-hmm.
Deborah, was there anything else you wanted to say?
No, thanks, Annie. And thank you, Cynthia, for all your good work.
Sure. Happy to be here. Happy to help.
Any other questions, Dan or Amanda, for Cynthia? Cynthia, thank you so much. And I'm sorry we're running so far behind schedule. And I've attended a couple of your meetings to listen in, and I appreciate you guys getting back to work, as quickly as you could, considering the pandemic. So thank you very much. And as Deborah said, thanks for all your great work.
Thank you very much.
Okay, I'm going to skip. Let's see. So committee goals. And before I ask if we can have a few more minutes, I just want to say, are there any committee reports? So I just want to know a yes or no. Do any committee members have reports? Okay, so then I believe the last thing that we have is the committee goals. So I think we could get this done in 5 minutes. Is everybody okay about going over for about 5 minutes?
Yes.
Deborah, Amanda, shaking your head yes, and Brittany, Kathy, any other clerks there? Is that okay?
Yes, we're okay.
All right, thank you so much. Let's see. Get the papers out. So I know Martha has her hand up. I wanted to give some update on the goal that she had proposed for us. Martha, go ahead.
Thanks very much, Annie, and committee. I just want to let you know that this is support number 6, support initiatives towards a price on carbon at the New York State and/or a federal level. At the state level, there's something called the CCIA, Climate and Community Investment Act, being put forward by a group called New York Renews. I haven't gotten directly involved in that at all, but sort of tracking it a little bit. On the federal level, the case board also sort of supported being active with the federal representatives. So Sarah Collada, Evan Hallis, I think it was Evan Hallis, and Miranda Phillips met with Tom Reed's staff, I want to say a month or 6 weeks ago, about the Energy Innovation and Climate Dividend Act. And on this coming Wednesday, Miranda and I are going to be meeting with Schumer's office with Amanda Spellacy and Tim Ryder, his legislative aide. So I just wanted to let you know that given what the president said about cutting emissions in half by 2030, this seems, and then everybody in the media is saying, well, how are they going to do that? It seemed like a really good time. And Amanda did respond to our request. So we're going to see what we can do.
Never mind that. Thanks, Martha. Never mind that we should really cut out all by 2030, not go by half. But that's a talk for another day. Any other comments, edits, questions on our 2021 committee goals? All righty. Well, finally got them done before the 4th of July, so I'm happy about that. Appreciate that.
You got them done before Memorial Day, Annie.
Memorial Day even. Woohoo. So before we adjourn, I want to thank folks for their passion on all these environmental issues. And I wanted to just put a nod and a thank you to legislator Dan Klein as a stalwart advocate for the forests. The forests are lucky to have you on their side. I truly mean that. We might not agree on every single thing, but I really do, appreciate your advocacy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else before we adjourn for today? Thank you, everybody, and thank you for going over for a few minutes, and members of the public, for coming today. Appreciate that. So as I said to Reggie Teasley, I think I mentioned this before, so the EMC will give their report next meeting. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thanks, Annie.
Thank you.